Welcome to the Innovative Leader Podcast. We bring you relational leadership ideas to navigate a changing world. And now for your hosts, Christy Geiger and David Phillips.
Welcome back, leaders. We're so glad you're joining us today. I'm here with David Phillips, leadership consultant, and I'm Christy Geiger, executive leadership coach, and you are joining the Innovative Leader Podcast. And our goal every episode is that we release generally once a week. We put out an episode to help leaders to transform really the way that we lead. Leadership is changing so much right now, and our discussions are really around what's changing in leadership. How do we evolve and grow ourselves so that we can be more effective in connecting with our people, our organizations, and the way that we lead? Today, we are jumping into the topic, building on the last couple episodes. We've been talking about how Industry 4.0, Web 4.0 have really been transitioning and affecting the way that we lead. And one of those skills, so it's bringing to the table different skills that change over time. One of those skills that we believe is changing is using the skill of intuition. So this skill is not a new skill. It's been around a long time. However, we would assert that in 2.0, in the era that we're coming out of, that really we've been more in a fact-based culture. So we lead based on information, the data, the analytics, and David can jump into this in a second because there's so much in our world that is data and analytics, and that has been a sage tool for making decisions.
Sure.
However, as we move into this era and this time where the world is more, there's more things that are unknown. There's more things as you think about being in that helicopter versus the concrete on the car. So when we're in that helicopter, there's just not the clear line that you're driving on. And so you have to use your intuition to help you to make decisions, to guide you, to know right from wrong, to understand what's going on. So David, share a little bit about, kind of give us some context coming out of 2.0. So coming out of our 2.0 production era in that industry, what do you see? Why was information so important then, and what is changing with Industry 4.0, Web 4.0 that is making, is it that information isn't as important? Some people might be a little sarcastic and say, oh, so we're throwing all the facts out. That's not really happening, but what's happening? How come there's this change to this squishiness?
Yeah, so much of what we've done in the past is been oriented around data and facts, and even today, what we're seeing is obviously the rise of that term analytics. Everybody's talking about analytics. There's analytics in football. There's analytics in business. There's analytics in politics. There's analytics. Everybody's talking about analytics, and analytics are important. One of the things that I have even considered in the past is doing some master's work in the area of business intelligence or data intelligence, and a lot of that is just looking at the data, creating models. So they create models, they create, and then they use all of this data and run it through a series of processes, a series of algorithms, and in many cases, you can uncover hidden things in there that you may not have ever considered before. The whole Moneyball piece in baseball was centered around this idea of analytics and being able to find these niche kinds of players that allow a team to function and work. And so that's been around for a few years, and it's a burgeoning skill right now. Everybody's looking for people who can do artificial intelligence, machine learning, business analytics, data analytics. Everybody's offering a master's certificate or a master's degree or a PhD. You can go anywhere from Michigan State to Southern New Hampshire or Grand Canyon University or Cornell or Harvard. Pick your and you can even if you ever use Coursera, you can do the same thing there. There's huge value in analytics, but 4.0 leadership really is about the relational aspects of leadership. And there are some things, I mean, this is what makes us human. There are some things that analytics cannot do. And that really is the interpersonal relationship, the intuition, the gut, those kinds of pieces. And so when we think about 4.0 and how highly relational it is, we have to consider those interpersonal skills and an aspect of those interpersonal skills, not just in leadership, but in life and in other areas, is the use of intuition, is that gut that something is not right, something is wrong, something is good, something is bad. It's really squishy, like that's your term. And so even though we're in an age of analytics, intuition is imperative in how we lead. And so that's kind of it really is it's kind of an odd time when you think about that, because everybody's wanting the analytical aspects, but what we really need our gut, our intuition. And so we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah, and to be clear, we're not saying that you throw data out or that you throw the information out. It reminds me, a friend of mine is a chief firefighter, and she talks about I don't remember the equation that she used. I think, David, you've used a quote in a past podcast about those percentages of how much information you have before you need to make a decision.
Yeah.
And the faster things move, the reality is the less amount of information you can have, where maybe you were 80-20 before, and now it's like 60-40 or something like that.
Yeah.
Remember which stat that is?
Yeah, I think it's anywhere from 40 to 70%. That if you've got 40%, you've got enough to move. If you've got 70%, you've probably got too much, because you've spent too much time waiting to get more information. So you're probably at a deficit in that regard.
Exactly. So that is really what we're talking about. And that when we look at emergency responders, we look at crisis responders, that is more because of the speed of how fast things are moving. That's more, as leaders, we have to develop those skill sets in order to be able to move faster and make decisions faster, which requires another skill. And that skill is really intuition. So today we're going to jump into things that block our intuition, what keeps us from being able to access that intuition, and then also things that give us or allows us to access our intuition more. And our intuition too, I think it's a funny thing. I think of my intuition, you referenced it as your gut. It's that inner knowing. Your intuition has this inner knowing that tells you, and we were talking earlier, like really, I think it does play on your education and your experience. These things all come together in order to form that intuition. So again, not negating those things from the past, but really lifting up this intuition, because a lot of times we can set it aside and say feelings are not to be trusted. Intuition is not to be trusted. But really today we're saying, no, grow that skill of intuition.
Right.
So first of all, what are some things that block us from accessing our intuition? What do you think of as things that dull your sword from really being able to access accurate intuition?
So I think being at not having a variety of business experience dulls it. We were kind of talking before that one of the things that I've been thinking about is people who work somewhere all their life. And, that used to be the way it was. You went to work, spent 30 years working, 40 years, you get your pension, you move on. But that really does limit your experience to different systems and processes and resources and tools. And, it's kind of like you get stagnant. You can get stagnant in those roles. I mean, there's a lot of knowledge there about that company. And if you leave, you take that with you. But I think you really need a range of experiences, work experiences, even life experiences, to be able to grow, to explore, and to have this frame of reference, so that when something happens, you're pulling from so many different things, and it's not cognitive. You don't really necessarily know you're doing it. You're just pulling from all of these different resources, and your gut kind of kicks in. Everything just kind of comes together, and you kind of understand, hey, oh wait, I've seen that before. I know what that feels like, and it allows you to make a choice or make a decision. So I think one of them is just a broad range of experiences in your business and in your life. So obviously, what blocks that from happening is staying somewhere in the same place, in the same role, all your life. So I mean, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. It's an interesting thing because I think it's another trend that's naturally, sometimes you don't know what's first, the chicken or egg, where it used to be in, say, your grandparents or parents, that we talked about these legacy careers, right? Where you would go and you'd get out of college or you'd get out of high school and you'd work with this company, and you're with IBM and you had a pension and you retired with them. And that was like a noble and great career because you had this lifelong career with somebody. And then in our generation, that really began to change, where we saw the corporate loyalty wasn't necessarily there or whatever. So then people started to say, oh, well, I'm not necessarily going to be with this company, so I need to take care of my own career growth and development.
Right.
And we saw a little bit more career hopping. Was that because of the lack of corporate loyalty, or was that because of people looking to grow their career? I don't know. Maybe a little of both, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so then those dynamics were at play. But now we really see where in the career world, it's not uncommon that someone would be at a career 2-3 years and then they move on.
Right.
And that, I remember early in HR years, that was seen as an unstable person who was a career hopper. You absolutely didn't want to invest in them because they were not loyal to you. And if you got a career hopper and you saw that resume change, that was not good. Today, I think that's very common to have those evolutions. Now, I do think people need to be intentional about those evolutions. You can still tell a hopper, because a hopper goes to things that are unrelated versus someone who's progressing in their career and moving in a fashion that continues to upgrade their experiences or diversify their experiences is very different. But I think it matches this, because what is that doing? It's giving you wide exposure to models, systems, even if it's operating systems within an organization, operating values within an organization, a diversity of people, leadership, management, culture. All of those things is happening when you're diversifying in these different organizations, which sharpens your sword to be more aware, so that when you come into a situation, you're likely to recognize that because you've had so many experiences.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So I think it's, I think that's a, if you're only, and I think it really does limit you in a lot of different ways. I was just thinking about a couple of friends of mine in another organization and the culture that they're in. They've been there for 30 years or so, and they only know one culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so so the problem is when all of your business's dynamics are changing and you only know one way of doing thing, it's hard to break that. It's hard to transition that. And so that mindset is negative, I think. So I think we need to explore that. I think another one, and you noted this, is biases. Talk a little bit about biases.
Well, I think it kind of dovetails on the back of this exposure piece of it. I think that biases grow when we have certain experiences, and even biases are very natural. I think sometimes in today's world, we make biases bad, that, we label them in the bad box, that you're bad because you have a bias. The reality is everybody has biases,
right?
And our biases are created based on our experiences. And so, but the point is diversification. And the more that you diversify, you intentionally erode or expand, you erode your biases to expand your awarenesses. And as we expand our awarenesses, we become aware like, oh, okay, that culture is doing this because of that. Or
Right.
this is a key value for this culture. So they're going to prize doing these choices or these decisions versus in this culture, this is what their value system is. You become more aware of the different dynamics going on rather than just having this assumed bias, which really the problem with biases is when we become tunnel visioned. And
Yep.
when we're so tunnel visioned that we become a my way is the right way. My way is the way it has to be done. Those biases are very dangerous because they're so narrow-minded. It doesn't really allow for the inclusion and the diversity of other things going on.
Right.
And so one of these things that blocks our intuition would be our bias, because if we have a tunnel vision, which is our job as leaders, is to go, where are my biases? Where are my blind spots? Where am I tunnel visioned about something? Because those are very dangerous points for you, because you can't have the blind spots. You have to intentionally work to become aware of the blind spots so that you break down the biases in order to widen your awareness and your understanding of what's going on. So I think that can really block your intuition, because you're having a biased intuition, which isn't really an intuition. It's a jaded view
Right.
based on your biases.
Yeah, and in that case, if you're biased in that one area, in that one piece, then you can't fathom why somebody else wouldn't adjust to you.
Right. Think the
It's
way you think.
yeah, it's very selfish, oddly enough, I think, and lacks a level of humility. So I think that bias. I think we need to kind of pull the biases out of anything else that would block that.
The other thing real quick that I would just say is head. I think that we really are in a season that's kind of coming between head and heart.
Yep.
And in our past, we've really led with our head, which goes back to what we were saying at the top around information, versus intuition really is about accessing our heart, which will tip into what is going to help us get to our intuition. But on the other side is just an awareness of our head. And when are we in our head? And when are we overthinking? Or when are we making a logical, rational decision, but we actually are cutting off the emotional or the
Yeah.
awareness of the human element? The head can kind of be a little bit robotic at times. And so just kind of that awareness of head, when we're leading from the head, it can often block our intuition because
Yeah.
we intentionally cut it off.
Yeah, and we don't see. We don't. It limits what we can see about others.
Mm-hmm.
If you're only thinking about the things in your head and you're not observing, for instance, body language or even tone, if you're only making a decision that is based on a set of numbers, then or a set of facts, then you have the potential to destroy people in many ways, because if somebody's hurting, somebody is broken, emotionally broken, maybe somebody's going through a divorce, and you're making decisions simply based on a set of facts and not kind of understanding what's going on in that person's life, then that can have some really negative effects and impacts not only in your business but on the lives of other people. I think we need to lead with our. I think I would say it differently. We need to lead not with our head and with our heart, with the total, with all of us, and include that in there. But you're right. Leading with the head is could create some. You could damage a lot of things just trying to lead with your head.
Yeah. And I think it's just like this information thing. It's not saying to not use your head, right?
Right.
It's not saying get rid of all information. And I think that's the fear that in our 2.0 way of operating, we kind of cling to that and we're like, are you saying I shouldn't be thinking? Are you saying we just don't get any facts anymore? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
We get really upset because we actually cling to that because it's where our confidence and our comfort is.
Right.
And so this is really getting us out of our comfort zone because honestly, it is uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable there. I'm a very, command control person. I'm a high D, take charge, make it happen. I am not, ambiguity is not my friend. I've said that before.
Yep.
So when things are squishy, and I do love that word because to me, leadership, like you're trying to understand what's squishy and make it clear, and you're trying to find the ambiguity and find the continuity. So that's constantly what we're doing. So this is challenging, but if we don't stretch that skill, we won't have it to access, and then we're not as strong. So yeah, you're right. It's not about not using your head. Certainly. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk a little bit about what helps us to access our intuition.
Yeah. So I think the first one is a variety of experiences in a variety of different cultures. And I'm not talking necessarily about traveling overseas or things like that, though that may need to, you might get that opportunity and those kinds of things. But, we need to be in, like you said, we need to have a variety of different, we need to grow our skill set in a variety of different locations.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases that can be working. It may be working for the same company in different offices because they're going to have a completely different culture. But I think in this day and time, I think you're right. Job hopping is not a negative. It is to lifers, so people who've been at one company for a long time, but it's not now. And so you might want to explore your role within your own organization and see if there is maybe it's time to start considering a role outside of that organization, with another organization, and another role in that organization, and other things that can aid in that, to get involved in organizations outside of work. Charitable organizations, Big Brothers, Big Sister, those kinds of things, boys club, girls club, a variety of different things, to essentially get us outside of our own current culture and into the lives of the culture of others. Maybe go somewhere and or go spend time with people in another part of town that may look completely different from you, and sit down and just have conversations with them. Build. Obviously, you got to start relationships, grow relationships to be able to get to some deep stuff, but do that and kind of foster those kinds of relationships. So that broadens your experience level, and it lets you see things that you would have never seen before. There's got to be an intentionality about all of that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What else?
Yeah, I think the variety of experiences for sure. I think a lot of times we can do that just with ourselves, again, reflecting on where sometimes there's some great books. Reboot is one recently that I've been listening to that just goes back and analyzes your own history and your own experience. And what are my beliefs growing up? What was my stage growing up? And so the benefit in doing that is just, again, starting to recognize what are those biases that I have.
Yep.
And then it helps us to know, where do we need to diversify? What experiences have I not had that would be good experiences to include? And I agree with you as far as I love how the world feels like it's getting smaller. And to me, I'm in a couple organizations where on a regular basis, people from other countries are on the trainings and talking. And it's really fun to not only hear their accents and their perspectives and their words, or coaching people in other countries. I love that. It's so fascinating because we have so many similarities, but yet we have differences too. And just remaining curious about what do I want to learn here and what's possible to learn. So understanding what are my biases and then getting curious to expand is great. So just playing on that. But I think then the other one is kind of coming to that opposite of the head, which is really our heart. And I think the heart gets into, I think sometimes it can get into the whole compassion side of things, like you were saying, with being more human centric, seeing people as human beings versus human doings. And when we hold that vision, so part of that is how we're looking at things, but when we hold that vision, it also begins to change what are the inputs that are filtering inside of us that make us make a decision or that lead us to different conclusions. And so part of your intuition then comes from noticing an expression, noticing someone struggling, noticing somebody who is onboarded well or somebody who's not onboarded well, noticing our retention is not as great as it was, and discerning what's going on that's slipping. So when we're in that place of being heart-centric, not just head, yep, we want to go get that information and understand what's going on. We want those numbers. We need that dashboard. But then heart-centric is taking that time to connect with those humans and understand what might be going on. And I think all of that really leads to emotional intelligence, which simply put is the awareness of ourself and others, and then essentially how we manage it, our focus and our activity then. But when we can have that emotional intelligence to notice, how am I responding to other people? Am I feeling frustrated? Am I feeling angry? Am I feeling at peace? Like really, we have to manage our own emotional intelligence so that we can access the intuition. Because if our emotions have gotten hijacked, we're off into that limbic system and we have lizard brain going on, you're not accessing sage intuition. You're accessing something else. And so there's this heart that sees others, but it's really giving you new information to filter so that your emotional intelligence allows your intuition to accurately give you sage wisdom.
Yeah, I think, as when you run across that look of your spouse from your spouse and you go in your head or maybe out loud, I've seen that look before and I know what it means. So it's that awareness of who they are and what they do. And you've seen that look, you've seen them do that 1,000 times. And so intuitively in your gut, you know what's coming next. It could be good, it could be bad, right? So I think what we have to do is we have to apply that to so much of our life and so much of we have to notice things and be aware and live in the moment. And when we've seen that worker do that before, in our head, we go, now I know what's coming next. When I see that look on my staff member's face, then your gut says, I know what's coming next. And it allows you to make a decision. It allows you to respond, and instead of just reacting to what. And so I think awareness is huge. We've talked about awareness. We've talked about awareness and mindfulness several times, but it's important. This funny story. I'm teaching a class right now on entrepreneurial leadership, and one of the things that I have them watch every year is this TED Talk by a guy named it's not Tony Robbins, Anthony Robbins, I think is his name, and he's a professional pickpocket. And so he goes around and he's doing all these things, and so he's trying to get the watch off a person's hand, arm, the ring off a person's finger. He's doing all of these things, and what I want them to get out of that is the need to be aware of what's going on.
that we can walk through life on autopilot. And so we in the discussions this week, because that happens that it's they're watching that this week. The thought popped in my head of another video, and it's a video of these two teams, one's dressed in white, one's dressed in black, and they're passing the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And the at the beginning of the video, it says, count how many times the white team passes the ball. And so you're focused on this white team and how they're dressed in white, and in the middle of all of that, and you don't even see it, is a bear that comes walking through and starts moonwalking.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't see it until somebody points it out. And so the conversation this week has been these master students going, wow, I have never in my life considered what I am missing out on because I'm not just paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this awareness, if you can pay attention to what's going on around you and be aware and focus on people, focus on, what's happening. I think that grows your intuition because you instinctively begin to say in your head, in your heart, I know what's coming next. I know what's about to happen. So let me take and let me nudge in a direction, or let me say a kind word, or let me do a kind thing, or let me try to, rescue this in that case. So I think that's huge. But we run on autopilot. We don't even notice.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think you can use that in the same way, but two different directions. I think that you can take that awareness. So practicing the awareness of presence. So you're in that present awareness that may give you an intuition or a sense of where something is going so that you're aware of that, but then to use that awareness to get curious.
Yeah.
And so in that awareness, you can be like, like you mentioned with your wife or whatever, and you're like, oh man, here we go. She's going to get upset about whatever. So then instead of operating in that, it's like, and what would you like to do this weekend? I know that's not going to be a lot of fun for you. So what would you like to do? So then you can kind of take that into curiosity, or for that team member, when you are being present and you become more aware of what's going on for those other people. And you're like, okay, I know this is going to take us off into another direction. So then you can use that to become curious in that. What else does this make you guys think about?
Right.
What else does this distract you with, this topic or whatever? So then you actually use it to become more curious and further stay in that moment. But again, this is the squishiness, right? This is that play where you're just kind of going with the flow and you kind of don't know. And that's the hard thing, I think, is not knowing, which is why you have to depend on your intuition. I think there's exercises that there used to be more the team building exercises where you do things blindfolded in order to access the intuition of where is the wall. Like sometimes there's fear, but it's like, what is that intuition? But when I was in graduate school, and I think I might've shared this once before, we had a course that the teacher asked us, what is one thing that we know? And so we had to think like something that in our gut of guts, we knew to be true. And it was interesting. The one that came up for me in that moment, which was really kind of scary, was my husband, Mike, and I were dating at that time, and we were newly dating, but I knew in my gut that I was going to marry him. And I was like, oh boy, because I wasn't really sure that I was ready for that kind of a thought. So then I was like, oh, I don't know. But I mean, it was true. We got married. We've been married 22 years, whatever. So there's a way that you can test yourself and ask, what do I know? And practice accessing your gut of what do I know?
Right.
And then responding and acting to that is a really interesting practice. But I think it comes from your point of being aware of others and then accessing what do I know because of that? How's that filtering?
Yeah. And I think another thing you can do is to every time you know something, like your gut tells you something and it's right, to write it down or make a note of it.
Yeah.
Because one of the things
that I have done is when my gut kicks in, kind of when I start talking about it to other people, they're like, is that really, because it just doesn't make sense to them. And I go, back in 1989, this happened. My gut said, and it happened. Back in 1994, and you can start rattling off those experiences,
right?
And so now you have almost an objective basis upon which you're making your gut oriented decision, because even though it's squishy, you have this history that my gut has proven me right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's another thing that we can do to kind of aid and build and grow that, and then to lean on that. Sometimes your gut's wrong, but I will tell you, I can't think of a time when I, in my heart of hearts, I knew something. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't define it. And it was wrong. It just has always been right.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think the more you use that skill, the stronger it gets.
Like a muscle.
That's why you want to practice it. And I like your idea about writing it down, because in the beginning, we can doubt whether, is that intuition? What is that? Is that what I really want? Is that my ego? Is that my selfish nature? What is that? Is that my intuition? We don't really know. So you have to practice recognizing what is intuition versus what is something else. That is important to practice that, because just every internal thought is not your intuition.
Right. And you have to, you have to know when it's really your gut, as opposed to, like you were saying, as opposed to just some fleeting thought that comes through your mind. I think I can, when it happens to me, my whole disposition changes. I mean, it becomes something very real. And my spidey sense goes up.
Right.
Good, bad, or indifferent, my spidey sense goes up. So anyway.
Yeah. It's kind of fun to give it a name. What is your intuition? What part of you, and what is your spidey is your intuition side? Yeah, that's good. All right. Well, I know we have to wrap up. So yeah, today intuition is absolutely a 4.0 skill set. It is really about your ability to navigate in the unknown, which there is more and more unknown, uncertainty, whatever, but it's not going away. Leaders, we just have to get comfortable operating in this place, which our intuition will help us to do that. So identifying things that block us, things that will, reducing your experiences that are all the same, giving yourself some diversity, understanding your biases, paying attention to a balance of head, heart knowledge, growing your awareness of others, and being in tune to other people, and diversifying your experiences are all things that will help to grow that intuition. I'm sure there's more. Leaders, if you have an idea of things that you've used to grow your intuition, we want to hear about it in the comments. Put in there the things that you're using to grow intuition, become aware of intuition. Maybe it's a way that you use your intuition and you're really thankful that you did, but share those things with us.
Yep, absolutely. Check do that in the comments, wherever you get the podcast, on our website at theinnovativeleader.co, even on YouTube at our YouTube channel, all those ways to let us know. And we respond. We really do value your comments.
Absolutely. All right. Next week, we'll talk about more 4.0 skill set. And if people are looking for an idea too, go ahead and share that in there. If there's a skill set, you're like, hey, how the heck do we do this? We'd love to talk about it.
Would love it. All right. We'll look forward to being with you again. Have a great week.
Have a good one. Bye.
All right, bye.